Hello, everybody. So, a couple of newsletters ago, I wrote about voluntary simplicity, which is an idea that was really started by a guy called Duane Elgin, and it's a wonderful book if any one of you want to look at it. It's been revised and updated. But it's a really complicated thing for us to do, and we need support in doing it. And we can talk about it now, and we could talk about it for the entire year, and it would still continue to be a rich discussion. There are various words for it: voluntary simplicity, compassionate lifeways, conscious simplicity, living lightly on the earth-friendly living. The whole idea is to take into consideration other life besides our own and besides human. We've done a lot of inner work over this year together, and for those of you who are new, there are old recordings that you can look at where we tried to explore what makes our heart sing, how do we find our own power, those kinds of things. So as we move along, we'll revisit those each time. Every few months we'll revisit these things and take them even deeper so new people can join and share as well. But fundamentally we went from inner work, which is who are we, what do we really need, how do we find our own power, how do we make our own lives work the way we want, into now we're going to talk a little bit about the combination of inner and outer work. And the whole idea of voluntary simplicity is a wonderful combination of both. You can't do one or the other and really be effective or happy. We need both. And what it means is we really start to consider within ourselves, what is it that we actually need versus what is it that we want. And another complication on that is what are we taught that we're supposed to want. And we're taught that we want something. Is it actually what we really want? And then there's all the tremendous pressure from the society around us about what we're supposed to want, and the materialism and the consumerism and the ads. So it's a pretty interesting discussion to think about what is it that we really want and we really need. On the most basic level, we need the same things that animals do because we're animals. We need food and water and shelter. I personally think we need time to play also. And as humans, we need a little more. We need art and intellectual stimulation too. But fundamentally, what do we really need? And what's the definition of need? Oxygen's necessary, shelter's necessary. Is a cabin necessary? Is a large house necessary? Is a second home necessary? Is a bicycle necessary? How many clothes do we need? It's a really interesting discussion. And when I finish talking, I think we can explore that because I've been thinking about this for a while, and I'm absolutely sure there are tons of things I'm doing that I don't need. That has not even occurred to me yet. And thus, I think we can really support one another and share what it is that we've cut back on. And it's not a deprivation to cut back because as he talks about involuntary simplicity, we get so lost in he said it's not a sacrifice. The sacrifice is working to earn money to buy things we don't need. The sacrifice is having to drive far away from our families to work. The sacrifice is the way society is set up that deprives us of our own personal time, time with family, time with nature. That's the sacrifice. And if we start to cut back and live more simply, our lives get richer and richer and richer. I spoke briefly once about the Sherpa village I lived in up at 12,000 feet in the Himalayas. And the anthropologist I lived with there, she had invited me up and spent a lot of time with these people. And basically, they had almost nothing. They had some warm woolen clothing, and they had stone huts that had a lot of snow inside of them, very couple of pots. Very, very little. And when she first went up there, she said, these people look like they're poor, like they don't have anything. And they said, no, we're just not interested in the material thing. Look at the mountains we live in. We've got our yak. We've got our yak butter and our tea and enough to eat. We don't want anything else. And their whole lives were spent in connecting with each other and connecting with nature around them. And I don't have them here. I'm going to look for them. But I took some pictures up there. Not only was it stunning, but the people are just glowing and beaming with just the sheer joy of life, mischief and life and vitality, because that was their focus, not rushing and earning money to buy things that we don't need. Another interesting concept is the whole idea of enoughness. What is enough? We need something. Our whole culture is more. There was an ad the other day saying, and they emphasize the word more perhaps 5 or 6 times. And you get more, and you get more, and you more. What? But do we need more? And what are the consequences of more? We're surrounded by it. And one of the reasons that we've talked in the past about mindfulness is because it's almost like our minds have been taken away from ourselves with all of this stuff. And it's important for us to go within ourselves and say, what do I really need for a happy life? For me, I need books, for example. Can't live without books. I could live without them, but very unhappily. For someone else, it might be art, and that really speaks to them very deeply. It's very individual, but I think it's incumbent on us to think about that, what we really need. Hope, who's on this conversation somewhere, had talked about a wonderful thing called the 30-piece challenge, and she doesn't really know where it started. She found it online, and I think it was just one person who started it. Was the impression she got. And they just put an online challenge on Facebook, like, let's see if we women can cut down to 30 pieces of apparel, including jewelry, clothing, and shoes. It was like the 30-piece challenge. And apparently a whole bunch of women tried it, and they communicated with another online, look what I'm doing, now cut it down to 28, so it became a community thing. And almost universally, the way I understand it is everyone felt so much happier, so much freer, and they realized they didn't need all this stuff. There's another interesting book, and people will laugh at me for it looking at my office, but it's called The Life-Changing Magic of Tidying Up. And it's a really good book. It's how living with less frees you up. So those are 2 books I would recommend. So it frees us. There's a sense of tremendous, we're so busy and we're stressed and everything's fragmented and we're rushing around. If we simply, what did Thoreau say? Our life is frittered away by detail. Simplify, simplify. And my reaction to that is, and then we can think. And then we can think what it is that we actually need and how we want to live our lives. Some of us have camped a lot. Some of us have lived in third world countries. And again, you'll realize how little you really need other than the companionship of other human beings. How really little we need. So that's the inner part of it. In 1992, a majority of living Nobel laureates in the sciences signed a warning to humanity. This was in 1992. Human beings in the natural world on a collision course that may so alter the living world that it will be unable to sustain life in the manner that we know. The conclusion, we the undersigned, now these are all the living Nobel laureates in the sciences, we the undersigned, senior members of the world scientific community, hereby warn all humanity of what lies ahead. A great change in our stewardship of the earth and the life on it is required if the vast human misery is to be avoided, and our global home and this planet is not to be irrevocably mutilated. That's their word, mutilated. So that's the other side of it. One is for our own sakes, to really think about what it is we need, and in and of itself, that's just like the equivalent of a spiritual journey. So there's that beautiful inner work, and then there's the outer work of how important it is now for us to really consider what it is we actually need. A couple of quotes from Voluntary Simplicity. Simplicity is not an alternative lifestyle for a marginal few. It's a creative choice for the mainstream majority, especially in developed nations. Sustainability is so that's So it's not a marginal thing. It needs to be a creative opportunity. One of the things I like about all of this is because each one of us can do this in our own way. If we're shy and can't go out in the world and start a whole movement or go fight for wildlife corridors or anything else, this is something we can each do. We can begin to explore what it is we can start to, and the word isn't right to give up, because you're not giving up, you're gaining. You're exchanging busyness for calmness. You're exchanging by doing that. Each of us can do that personally. And then the wonderful thing about that is, as we do it, we begin to feel stronger. And we also are a model for people around us, perhaps without even realizing it. So it's something that's in each of our power to do. In a little way or in a large way, doesn't matter, because it's the beginning of the process that puts out that kind of energy that we're starting to think of how to do with less rather than more. And another quote from the Voluntary Simplicity is, sustainability is simultaneously a personal choice, which is what I just talked about, a community choice, a national choice, and a species choice. So I've talked in the past about a little bit about this, but it is so important, and it's such a nice opportunity for each of us to be able to participate in making change, is to think carefully of where everything we own comes from the earth. Everything we own and buy has consequences for the earth. The dye of the shirt I'm wearing, the material of the shirt I'm wearing, comes from the earth. And everything we do has impacts on other life, on wildlife in particular, because there's so little place for it left. How do we consume consciously, carefully, contribute back? And each of us can find our own thing that interests us. Is it clothing? Is it food? Is it transportation? How do we manage this? So I like talking about it because it's something each of us can do. Duane Elgin also. The answers that we seek will be of our own making. They're still in the process of being discovered in our own lives. And he said, many of us feel that are we helpless in the face of such immense challenges? And the reality is just the opposite. Only change in our individual lives can establish a resilient and strong foundation for a promising future. He also discusses how do we create our sense of identity? Is our sense of identity someone who consumes, someone who's careful, someone who's extremely careful, someone whose life is dedicated to thinking about other life? Who are we? So those are some thoughts I wanted to share with you. The other thing is the emotional quality of life. If you live with the basis of your life, expanding your sense of community or our sense of community to include all life in everything we do. So there's a sense of nurturing and protecting. We don't want to waste paper. We don't want to cut down trees. We don't want to pollute. We don't want to have plastic in the oceans, all that stuff. The fundamental approach of we don't want to hurt other life is and to care for it puts you in a position of living a life of caring and protecting. If you want to go to a purely practical point of view, it's good for the immune system, but it's also good for the spirit and it's good for the planet. And many of us are deeply caring, but we're also so distracted that we end up being often mindless in the way we just go about our work, and the external pressures make it so hard. And that's why I want to have these conversations, because I think we need to support one another. We need to help one another in this. Some of us want to start saying, okay, I'm going to look at clothing and I'll tell you next month what I did. Or just discuss with one another now. I'm sure many of you have already thought about this and already do live simply. How can we foster this more, and how can we support one another? So those are my thoughts for the day. Chelsea.
Thank you, Susan. That was wonderful. So Tonight's discussion is now open for conversation, and we would love to hear from all of you. You now all have the ability to unmute yourselves. Please be respectful with your timing, and we ask that you stay on the topic of discussion and try to go deeply into what we've started the conversation with.
Hi, I'm Marta, and I live in New York State. And I'm simplifying in a way that, Susan, you haven't discussed, but I think it's equally important, and I think you'll agree. I was sitting having dinner the other night, and I was just looking at all my food and noticing, this spinach came from the ground, and I was noticing each thing on my plate and being thankful. And then I looked at the chicken, and I had bought barbecued chicken in the grocery store, which is absolutely delicious. It's not organic, and it's delicious, and it's easy, and I can just bring it home and take it off the bones. And I looked at it and I thought, I can't be thankful for this, because I knew that that chicken had had a terrible life. And I have a couple friends who are vegans and a couple friends who are vegetarian, and I've thought about this. I don't eat that much meat, particularly red meat, just out of preference. But I looked at this chicken and I thought, Marta, you got to do something about this. Because I don't want to consume something that some other person or animal hurt for. And so I actually went online and I bought a couple vegan cookbooks, and they were delivered, and I read them, and just got more familiar with that kind of cooking. And so I went, in the last couple of shopping trips that I made, I bought some of the things that were recommended in there that I hadn't bought. And so tonight I made the second vegan type dinner that I have made since buying those books. And I had bought lentils today, and I had never even had any idea how to cook lentils and never had bought them, but I bought red lentils, and I added vegetable broth and cooked them in vegetable broth, and I added onions and garlic and carrots and kidney beans and some things to make it tastier, and it was absolutely delicious. And I went and picked kale out of my garden and boiled that in a little vegetable broth and added that to it and added some fresh tomato, and it was just delicious. And I thought, as I looked at it, I could be thankful for everything that was on my plate. And I know that I didn't hurt anything. I didn't hurt anyone. So that's kind of my current way of trying to simplify. Thank you.
For those of you who are new here, I tend to try and not respond because I want this to be a conversation between all of us, and I don't want to dominate it. But thank you.
Hi, can everyone hear me?
Yes, hi, Lori.
Hi, this is Lori from Boise, Idaho, or currently a small town in the mountains called Pine, Idaho, which is 2 hours from Boise. Yeah, thanks for sharing that. I think there's a lot of guilt that people have when they don't feel like they're doing enough, but I think just the fact that you're thinking about it and, you know, continually trying your best is all you can do. And I think you should be proud of that and happy that you're at least aware of the issue and trying to do something about it. So thank you. I guess I wanted to mention, as far as living simplistically, I think there's a subconscious or maybe even a conscious correlation that people have with simplicity to not having anything luxurious. And in my life, I try to think of ways that I can live simply but in a luxurious way. I love going to yard sales and estate sales and finding beautiful things that people didn't want, and I'm, you know, basically furnishing my whole cabin up here with secondhand furniture and antique stuff, and I just absolutely love it. And I feel like it's the most luxurious place I've ever lived, and but I still feel like it's a simplistic way of living. I'm connected to all the animals up here, and it's just so fun and so heartwarming to get to know these animals that come around. We have elk on the property and a skunk that comes by almost every night. And I guess I wanted to know other people's thoughts on, because I've been feeding the wild animals, and to me, I'm justifying it because we've impacted the environment so much that I feel like any helping hand we can give, as long as it's consistent, you know, all the better. Because we have our cats up here, and we have leftover cat food that they don't eat, and so I, you know, put that out for the skunk. And I don't know, I'm hoping to become friends with him eventually because he's been coming around so often. But you know, we had a really hard winter a couple winters ago, and so we ended up buying some certified weed-free hay for the elk, and I got to sit with the elk for 3 or 4 hours and just talk to them, and you know, they got to know me. They weren't spooked by me, and it was just fantastic. But anyway, I guess my question is, what are people's thoughts on feeding wild animals? You know, should you help in that sort of way? I mean, I know it's not good to do that in a national park or out of a vehicle. You know, you don't want to attract animals to a place that they're not already in, or, you know, if they're not already close to humans, you don't want them to be necessarily habituated. But I don't know, in my heart of hearts, I really want to help them in that way. So just interested to hear people's thoughts on that.
And I do want to just jump in. I want people to be able to answer that. And thank you, Lori, for sharing with us tonight. But I do just want to also bring us back and remind us of tonight's topic, which is living simply. So people just, you know, as we're answering Lori's thoughts, maybe mix it with your own of how you've made changes in your life or thought about need versus want, or things you've, you know, consciously done to live more simply. So thank you.
Simply and consciously, not just simply, as in getting rid of all the plastic in your house, or at least if it's in the house, not getting any more and thinking of where it goes. So many, many different ramifications. So simply
Hi.
and mindfully. Hi, Gita.
Hi, Susan. Hi, everybody. And I want to speak to what you were saying, Marta, that I think it's a wonderful process you're going through, and not necessarily very comfortable along the way. I mean, until you start eating the vegetables. I think that's a good idea. But it reminds me of, or it brings me to one thing that I'm quite you spend a lot of time thinking about and being conscious of is about clothing, and I really try to. I don't shop very much for clothes. I just tend to get stuff secondhand these days, which is fine. And I just want to be conscious about what I get, and not to have something where anybody have suffered from producing. So then I'm looking into what I have already. That's stuff that I've got a long time ago. Things made of suede or shoes made of leather or whatever. And I'm thinking, what shall I do with this? Can I wear it? Is it sort of politically correct or whatever? And I'm, at the moment anyway, I'm coming to the conclusion with myself that I'm not going to get rid of anything that I like, because these animals suffered to bring this to me anyway. So I'm going to honor it in that way by using it. And I'm not going to buy anything else from now on. But that's that's another thing, I think, to really be conscious of what do we get in that way? How has it been produced, and why did it come into being? And then how to share that with the world. I had an incident about a year ago with my cousin who had a birthday, and he was sending out this list of gifts and lots of stuff on it that would have been produced by a lot of animals suffering. And I thought, I have to speak up. I have to say something here. And I did, and it was never commented on, and he didn't speak to me about anything after that. So, it's difficult sometimes bringing that awareness on. But I feel like, would you say, Marta, like I buy meat for the dog, and I really think about what I get. I want her to have stuff that's good, but also that it needs to be something that has come to us through animals who've lived a good life. So it even goes into, what we feed our animals. Thank you.
Thank you, Gita. You reminded me, and so I want to share something really quick with you all about something that one of my friends in college created called a Be Earth Day. And it's on your birthday. You ask everyone, instead of asking for gifts, you ask all of your friends and family to do something for the earth in your honor, but also obviously just as in the earth's honor. And it's kind of a nice way to start to shift the culture around, that consumerism and materialism. And there are ways, I think, if we start to be really, conscious of our intake and our output, there are ways we can keep these traditions and, the things we like and enjoy, but just do them in a different way, in a different manner. And that's one that I really enjoyed. So a good idea for anyone with birthdays coming up to ask of your Be Earth Day.
That's nice, that idea of shifting. It's not like you have to give things up, you just have to change them.
I would like to share my experience. Am I speaking now?
Yes, that's fine. Hi.
Morning, everyone. I'm Kiki. I just finished a trip. I just got back from US. I had 12 days travel around from LA to Las Vegas to Sedona, and then to Joshua Tree National Park, and then back to LA. So it was a very dramatic trip. I was driving around the desert from a very materialistic city to very pure nature, national parks, take rest, see the stars. I love this. I love US a lot. I would visit more. In Las Vegas, I saw all the highest technology for entertainment, the best show, best performance on the world, and all the good food stuff, fabulous. And then when I traveled to Sedona, the way driving to the nature, everything simplified. The landscape, the buildings, the people, the culture, shift to a very natural and spiritual atmosphere. The quality of the enjoyment to see the good show in Las Vegas is the same as I look at the fabulous landscape in Sedona. Those sunrise and sunset, the air, the bird songs, all are fabulous. Maybe I would say that's even more enjoyable for me. So, like, I was thinking, like, materials, sometimes it's like a stimulation on our five senses, more than what we need. If we stick to our own nature instinct, like, we all can see beautiful stuff, listen to the birds, and feel the winds and airs, breathe, smell the flowers. It's all very wonderful. It's not less than those materials stuff. So it's like life can be very simple as you stick to nature, and it's more belong to in my aspect. It's more belong to me. So I'm a very strict spiritual practitioner. I do fasting twice a week, 2 days a week. I don't eat beef, pork, lamb. And I consume very less. I try to consume as less as possible. People were so surprised why I am doing this practice. I cannot tell very clearly, but inside, until this morning, I think I can tell clearly it's about I want to get back to be free from, as I was so used to live in the material world, having all the facilities, and I found myself was so under control. I was controlled by the market, not by myself. So now as I try to get back to myself, to get back to what I basically need and enjoy the natural environment, I find my freedom back. It's like I feel good when I eat. I also feel good when I don't eat. So it's like I can feel good anytime I eat or not eat. It's not about what I eat. It's not about how many stars the food is. It's about I enjoy the food come from nature, from the earth. People love to eat with me because when you look at how I eat my face, you will know. I enjoy food a lot. whatever I eat, I enjoy a lot. So it's like, I always feel so thankful. I always say thank you to food. Thank you for giving me life and give me energy. Even for drinking water, I feel the texture is different. When I say, I love you, thank you, I praise you, I am you, that's what texture of the water would turn into smooth immediately and very tasty. I don't know if anybody tried that before. So it's like, simplicity is something more, it can be a very creative way. And as we know how to appreciate what we have. Thank you.
Chelsea, are you there? Did we lose you because there's low bandwidth? Are you there? I love the comment that you said, simplicity can be very creative. Do you have that picture, Chelsea? Can't hear you. You're on mute.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't know I was muted. Yes, of the trash.
Yeah,
Yes, I will bring that up.
because it's another variation of what Kiki was saying about being creative. Kiki, that was beautiful.
Thank you.
I had another question for you later if other people don't want to pursue what you said. I had one more question about your comments. But show us what you got, Chelsea.
So, can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah, so this is, if anyone has heard of the Zero Waste Challenge or Zero Waste Living, the idea is to essentially, become trash or plastic free. And that's done in a way of, very conscious intake and use, and then a lot of reuse. So not just recycle, buying in bulk, not buying things wrapped in extra plastics. So these examples, these mason jars are people who have taken this challenge. And I believe the one on the right is a year's worth of trash. On the left is 9 months. So it just shows us, what really is possible if we put ourselves to it.
How to do that?
Like pushing ourselves a little bit, like Kiki with her eating and not eating, pushing yourself a little bit, pushing yourself a little with the trash. So these conversations, I'm hoping that get us each, myself included, to push ourselves a little more. And push might not be the right word. So that we do add that to our thinking and do a little more than we have been. And Gita, I wanted to mention when you talked to I don't remember if you said it was your brother or not, and there was a silence, but even so, it's now in his head. You put that energy out there. You don't know what the impact might be. And it's important for us to do that.
I'm not sure if I just speak up or how I kind of get in on the conversation. It's Elizabeth O'Connell.
Hi.
Hi.
Just like this is perfect.
Yeah.
Okay, very good. I'm just happy for the food for thought because I'm by nature a New England pack rat. And I've been looking around at all the things I have accumulated over many years and do not need it all. and figuring out how to, I live many steps up from the street, so running up and down is not too good right now. And just looking at the ways that I can free myself up and also, you know, recycle and reuse. I recently, I think it was a post maybe on Facebook, they were talking about in Sweden, they call it death cleaning, but they suggest you don't wait till you die. You begin to think of how you can make little gifts to people as you are simplifying your life, my life, by giving. And I've been thinking about that quite a lot. I do appreciate art. I have a lot of very eclectic pieces kind of hanging around my home, and those can stay. But many of the things that I have, including some books, and I have a lot of them, and just plain clutter and paper and things that I've saved, and you know, the mentality of, yes, but I might need it 20 minutes after I throw it away. And so this idea of simplifying and living with less is becoming more and more attractive. When I first moved into this apartment I live in on the first floor of a Victorian cottage here in Staten Island, there were so many things that needed to be repaired that I could only unpack about 2 boxes. And I remember looking around at all these boxes and saying, and I've been doing this for 3 months and I haven't needed a single thing in these boxes. And it was actually irritating. But, you know, over time I unpacked them and they got sort of amalgamated into the house. And I'm glad to just have this discussion as sort of spurring me on to do it. I loved, I didn't quite get your name. Was it Kiki? Yeah, I loved what you said, Kiki, and absolutely the gratitude. I broke my arm recently, and I've been thanking it for, it's still in a cast, but I've been thanking it for what it can do for me, because it's not totally useless, you know. And I'm going to try that with the water, because I love the suggestion. It's can be pretty expensive here in New York to even try to find responsibly sourced food. I'm trying to do that as much as I can. I know I can do better. I was in Arizona recently, and the bus pulled up alongside a cattle truck, and I was eye to eye with this little Holstein cow, and I know something shifted inside. And I haven't gotten there yet, but I know it's shifted, and I know something has to give there. So thank you all. I'm going to take this in. Certainly it needs to move out from me, but I think I can think better when there's fewer things in here to clutter my attention. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, that book, The Magic of Tidying Up, basically says how incredibly freeing it is and how we can think more clearly.
Magic of Tidying Up.
Yes. Well, we send out references at the end, along with the thank yous, and Chelsea will give you that reference.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to honor what Lori said too about making a whole cabin just of recycled and secondhand things. Then you're not contributing to the problem. And if they're already there, as Gita said, if they're already there, you might as well use and enjoy them. But the idea is not to create more waste, not to create more suffering, not to take up more land away from wild things. We don't need that much space. I have a fantasy which I'll share with you, which is in Native American lives, there's like a ritual where they go out for 3 days or so and have a vision quest, and they go without food or water. It's not exactly a vision quest, but I was thinking, what would it be like if, as part of a ritual in school, when kids are, I don't know, 11 or 12 or so, it would be voluntary, that they agree to go one day without water, one day without food, one day without heat. This is just a very rough idea. One of the reasons I like living where I am is because it's so cold in the winter that, boy, do you appreciate the heat when you come in, rather than just having it there constantly and not understanding and appreciating it. And it adds so much to our lives if we once have a slight deprivation. Comfort is a danger. If we have slight deprivation, then you always feel differently about water after that, or the ability to be warm, or the ability to eat. And that lack of appreciation, because we're always going so much for comfort, and our civilization makes us all so comfortable, we don't really even appreciate it, and that actually deprives us. It deprives us of the pleasure of appreciating what we have, just because we always have it. That's another fantasy of mine to share.
I'd just like to comment to that, Susan, the going without, or imagining, having experiences that are beyond what we normally have. Reminds me of way back many years ago at the university. We had I was studying communications, and so speech therapy, audiology, and so on. And so we had a subject where we were exploring, experimenting with being deaf for a couple of days. We had our ears plucked out, or we were blind, or we sat in a wheelchair for a day, or whatever. And so in order to do that, or when we did that, we got a sense of what it was like having these ailments, having these limitations. So going without water for a day would also mean maybe understanding people who don't have water very much, clean water, or food, or so it wouldn't just be appreciating it in that way, but also giving more sense of how so much of the world population actually live on a daily basis. So I like that idea.
I've gotten to the point where I feel slightly guilty going out to restaurants. All this food around, and
I wanted to speak to what Elizabeth was talking about. She said that she felt that when she would simplify her surroundings, that she would be able to think more clearly. And I think that another way that we can simplify our lives that helps us to be more present and think more clearly is also learning to say no to things that we don't have to do. I think that there's so much of a tendency to be busy all the time and to get your validation from feeling like you have to be busy all the time, can actually be detrimental to your spiritual practice, because I think we all need time to just be quiet and to, like Kiki was saying, listen to the birds and just see the stars. And it helps center us, and we can be of more value to other people, to animals, and to the earth when we don't fill our lives every single minute. I mean, I work a lot, I'm busy a lot, but I try to take time every day to just, and I have my coffee in the morning. I just go outside if it's, possible, and just listen to the birds and see my flowers. If it's cold or raining, I stay inside and I hug my cat. And, just, I think that simplifying what we do as much as we can within the things that we have to do for our career and for our families and so on can also be very beneficial. Thanks.
That reminds me of a TED Talk I just heard, actually, Marta, where a woman was saying how children have lost boredom in a sense because we fill it now with, you know, technology and different things, but how tragic that really is to childhood, because in those moments of, you know, being bored is often when we went outside and went into nature and got creative in our own sense of, you know, ways to fill our time. And so it was an interesting thought that she was, you know, urging people to do more of nothing. And I think that, you know, comes back to this idea of simplicity and how we, you know, I don't know, how we spend our time and then also how we fill our lives. So we are just 5 minutes away before the hour as well. I would love to open it up and hear to anyone who we haven't heard from tonight.
Let's see, what names was it? Deborah? Ella? Amali? PJ? People have something to share? I would like to draw a line from what does all of this have to do with the Earth Fire is basically an animal sanctuary. It's because if we are mindless and busy, we don't connect to nature. We don't understand the consequences of our actions. And in the end, it's the earth that suffers. In addition to us, there's a direct line between simplifying our lives, thinking more clearly, having less clutter, and beginning to connect with real life around us, and then acting differently and working to save it.
I'm glad you said that, Susan, bringing that connection back. And I'm thinking that one thing that then will come as a natural thing is to reflect on, you know, our belief system, even as to why are we so busy. Why do we believe that if we don't work this much, or do we need? I mean, it comes back to also what you said. Do we really need this big house and so on? But even not, I mean, I don't have a lot of money for the moment, but I do know that I need to feed my dog. I need to feed the birds. I need to feed the squirrels. I need to, coming back to the wildlife, but that's a priority. And so I have to trust that when I do that, then everything else will be provided for somehow. It will be fine and will be okay. And when I look back over my life, I can fortunately see that that has been true. So that's another practice to look at what kind of belief system do we feed in that sense as well.
And support in others.
And support, yeah.
So I would like to mention again the idea of enoughness. I think that's a very interesting thing for us to think about. What is enough for us? And it'll vary with each person, but I don't know if we always consider that. We just see something, we want it. Is it enough? Do we need it? What's enoughness? Just as something to think about. We can communicate with each other by email or Zoom or anything else. And since we do these once a month, we can share ideas, we can support one another in this. Elizabeth, who was it who said that they were going to try Kiki's idea with water? Was it Elizabeth? Was it you, Elizabeth?
Yes.
Yeah, so I'd like to hear how that works and how decluttering works for you. And Marta, I was just really touched by the idea that you could not be thankful for that chicken. It's such a striking thing. You know, we're told to be thankful for the food, and how could you? And beautiful things people said today. It's hard once a month to keep the momentum up. So I encourage you to communicate with each other or with me or with Chelsea and about how can we keep this going? How can we do it for ourselves in this group? Because I'm grateful for what Kiki said, and I'm always happy to be reminded how important it is to declutter and all of the nice things you said. Nice is an empty word, but to continue using these conversations to actually think about things and start to make the changes. I really think it's going to make each of us feel like we're contributing something, not just to ourselves, but to a movement of, as those scientists said, a radical change in how we live on the earth, which is what we need. Not a little change, we need a radical one. But it can start with small things. So that's my summary for today.
I just want to say that I really appreciate you, Susan, and Chelsea, you, and all of you wonderful women who have come to this conversation tonight. I've begun to get to know a few of you a little bit better, and I just cherish you, and I cherish the opportunity that we have to share ideas with each other. And it's just wonderful to have this supportive online community and to share ideas that help us all live in a more conscious and spiritually connected way. So thank you, all of you.
Oh, I also want to thank you, all of you, for this kind of in-depth conversation. It's not, I cannot find anyone to talk about it outside, but here I can hear, share, and learn more from all of you. Thank you so much. I love this conversation so much, and hope to see you all again and again and again and again and again.
That is so wonderful. Thank you to everyone. My heart is full. I feel honored to be able to share this with you all as well and be a part of Earth Fire and really just see, you know, the evolution that these conversations have taken over a year that we've been holding them and see the space that we've created. And for all the, you know, new people tonight, we hope that you come back and that you do share in the future. Everyone's voice is so unique and welcomed. There's a lot of growth and learning that happens in these spaces, and tonight especially was really neat to get to hear people share really personal things about what they've done to simplify and things they want to do in the future to be more conscious about. So thank you for that. And so we are at the hour of another wonderful conversation. We will continue for a half hour for those of you who are able to join us. But for those of you who are not, we honor the time that you shared with us tonight, and we look forward to seeing you next time. The next conservation conversation will be July 18th at 6 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. If you are not on our newsletter, please join it, and then you will get the updates for the conversations and when you can register. Also, please consider sending a donation. We would love to be able to keep continuing these conversations for free. Again, the recording will be posted on our website by Friday, and I will send out a thank you email with all of the resources and materials that we've talked about tonight. Susan, do you want to make an announcement about the Schumacher course as well before we
in case anyone's interested, it's a long shot, but I'm going to be in Europe because I'm going to be at this conference, Our Sacred Earth, at the end of August, early September. And then I'm going to teach a weekend course at the Schumacher College in Dartington, England. Just in case anyone is interested, sign up. It'd be great to see you in England.